All right, well, welcome everyone. This is the second of our RFPD quarterly meetings. It's nice to see a good group of people here. Just as a friendly reminder, we started these because I think I felt, and others I spoke to kind of felt, we had the meeting at the annual assembly, and then we talk about a lot of stuff, and then some of that stuff would fall by the wayside. The task force has done amazing work this last year, which has been really great. So the idea here is not to take the place of the task force or to take the place of anything that happens at the annual meeting, but to kind of have a forum to bring things up in real time when it's needed, like when there are changes to ACGME, make some kind of change, or maybe be able to move some of the things that happen at the annual meeting that would be timed better here. So like Mike Salino's talk is a good example, because depending on when the annual meeting falls, we may or may not have matched data. So that would be an example of maybe if we have a meeting in like May or June, his talk could be moved to this kind of forum, and that would allow at the annual meeting to use that space for something else. So those are just some basic examples of why this was started, and where we hope it kind of goes and grows. I'll talk a little bit about here now. So just to give some general updates, and I'll let these folks talk in a minute, but you may or may not be aware, there's a task force within the RFPD, and kind of what they've been doing the last year is looking at recruitment processes, and they were a big driver in our use of program signals and some other things that would take a long time to kind of discuss because they've done so much, but they're a task force within the RFPD. And so historically, the RFPD has not been like a traditional committee in that sense, where we have subcommittees or task forces or anything like that. But in having some talks, there's another task force that's kind of being born, that is the PDPQ task force. So we'll hear from Dr. Garrison in a little while, which is a QI-centered type task force. And so what I think we might see happen is not a lot of these types of things pop up, but maybe a few pop up, a few different task forces. Some of them maybe come and go, some of them will stay and maybe become, I don't know what the nomenclature will be. I've been talking with Bernadette and Candace and Laura about that, because we have the one named task force, maybe it will transition into an official subcommittee or whatever it becomes. The same with PDPQ. Maybe over time, if these are things we want to keep going, there'll be like rotations of leadership. As far as I know, like Jeff was put in charge of the task force, and I don't even know if you were given a timeline or want a timeline. So these are all things that will kind of be discussed, I think, in these types of meetings and moving forward, kind of where we want to grow and where we want to kind of take charge and not be passive about where we want our residencies and fellowships to go and how we want to run them and lead. Another quick reminder, Candace said if you weren't on, the hotel is booking up to tonight. You said tonight's the last night or tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow's the last day to book rooms.
So there are still some rooms left at the conference hotel, the Hilton Anaheim, but that block is closing tomorrow. So if you want to stay there and the dates match up to what they have available, you should do that this evening or first thing tomorrow morning. And if not, there are still rooms available at the Marriott, and I just got word that they're going to be open for a few extra days. So if you know anyone who still needs a room, please let them know. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Candace. And then as we all know, the Tuesday is going to be at the RFPD in Anaheim, but actually Monday night, February 20th, is when our happy hour cocktail hour is going to be. And if memory serves, that's starting at 7 or 7:30. And more details to come. Right, I think maybe more details to come. I don't have like a time or place. Sorry, a place on my calendar.
Yeah, it's going to be on the Sunset Deck.
Okay.
On Tuesday evening.
Monday evening.
Monday evening.
I mean Monday evening. Sorry, at
6:30 to 8.
Thank you. I was trying.
6:38. Okay, so I was so the sunset deck sounds very nice. 6:30 p.m. Monday, which is the day before our meeting.
Yes.
So it'll be a little different than in years past where it's right after. But there are other things happening with the conference kind of right after our meeting closes. Okay, well, I'm gonna move on to updates from our task forces, and then we'll touch on a couple other things, and then there'll be some open forum. So I'm gonna hand it over to Jeff, Dr. Jenkins, if in case he has any updates from our task force.
Thanks, Miguel. Yeah, I was just checking my itinerary to make sure I was going to be in town in time for the happy hour on the sunset deck, which yes, I can make that. So indeed. Yeah. First of all, you mentioned the timeline. They told me it would be a year, but it's already been a year, and I don't think we're quite done yet because we want to see how the match turns out, because we made all these changes. We would like to see the data afterwards and get you guys' reaction, collective impression of how things went when it's all said and done. So I think we've got a few more months at least to go on the task force to finish that up. But also, we'll be, our task force members will be essentially running the this year's RFPD pre-conference seminar about the application cycle. It's gonna be great, so exciting. Oh, and my cat is knocking my laptop across the room while I try to talk. Sorry about that. Hope no one's prone to motion sickness. But yeah, well, let me see. We're gonna talk about social media opportunities and pitfalls. The world famous Eric Wysotsky is going to give that little talk. We got Miguel Escalon talking about interviews, offering interviews. Oh, we got it's an all-star cast. Steph Rand, technology resources. This is going to be it's going to blow your mind. It's going to be so informative. It's really amazing. Brian Tonkin talking about holistic application review. And then Nikola Dragojevic talking about interview invitation process. And then our representatives to the AAMC for the supplemental application, Ashley Bolger and Natasha Romanowski, are going to talk with us about how preference signaling in the SUP app experience went. And they'll have data hopefully by that time. It won't be post-match data, but it'll at least be some preliminary data that the AAMC is compiling about interview offers and how preference signals affected interview offers and likelihood of getting one, et cetera. So we'll have some preliminary data anyway. Yeah, so that's my little tease for our amazing seminar that we're going to have. It's going to be super exciting on Tuesday afternoon. And we're going to have to come to a couple decisions. One of the big ones is whether we want to do preference signaling again. And if so, how many signals per applicant? Because we need to give I think we've already indicated to the AAMC that yes, we want to do it again, but we need to come up with a number that we all kind of more or less agree on by consensus, number of preference signals per applicant. And we need to decide whether or not we want to have applicants signal their home program and away rotation programs, because there was so much inconsistency and confusion about that point this year. I think we need to try to all get on the same page. So we'll be talking about that, and then some other stuff that the world of GME wants us to come to an agreement on, like do we think as a specialty we can have a universal interview offer date? Do we want to think about interview cap like they've managed to do in OBGYN and a couple other specialties, et cetera? So things to talk about. It's going to be great. Lots of good group discussion. And I think I'll stop there because I wouldn't want to spoiler alert already going off. So yeah, I think that's my report today, Miguel. I talked too much last time.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. And I know you were told the task force would be about a year. I think what I was hinting at earlier is at some point coming together and deciding if it's still called the same thing or what it is, but still having a group of people with a structural leadership that would kind of drive these changes or be in charge of looking at these things and mining this data. So thanks. I'm going to hand it over now to one of our new task force co-leaders, Dr. Chris Garrison.
Hello, everyone. I think I know most everybody. Thanks, Miguel. And, this notion of signaling and the match, if anybody has read the scholarly work on how the match got developed and the marriage problem that the mathematics came through, this is back to the future, and the economists are loving the fact that if you're Adam Smith person, you're loving the fact that signaling is back on the table. And if you're not, if you're a curator of marketplaces, you're hating that signaling back on the table. And that's the eternal debate. So Jeff, you did a great job in introducing this big mashup. It'll be a great experiment for all of us to witness. And keeping in mind on, the days of the 70s where we were just beating the living crud out of residents for no good reason at all. Those days are past, and we might not need the kind of curated marketplace that we see and either hate or enjoy. So that's a great discussion, by the way. You didn't take up too much time at all. So let me introduce the notion of PDPQ, or reintroduce it. At the last meeting, Jaffe and I sat, and amongst others, and a few were on the call here, were standing up and saying that ACGME was unhappy with CLEAR. It's clear that they're unhappy with CLEAR across all disciplines. How they manifest that unhappiness is how ACGME, in their eternal wisdom, they will manifest. One of those manifestations is the development of PDPQ, which is this modeling of education and scaling of best practices in a model that is, if anyone's familiar with, ECHO program associated with the University of New Mexico. It's been recasted in so many ways and been in certain segments of rural medicine examples and the like. It has been wildly successful in extending specialty ideas deep into rural settings so care can be extended and expanded. So its basis is in a moniker or a soundbite is all learn, all teach, or all teach, all learn, where everyone, you have a moderator and everyone is contributing to the betterment of a problem that exists. And that model, a few of us, Holly, I'm looking at others who were on the journey with us this last year in ACGME, this series that we went through to understand how other disciplines, internal medicine, psychiatry, neurosurgery, urology, these are some of the examples of other disciplines that have gone through this PDPQ program. And it is very QI based. The notion of all learn, all teach. How do we get best practices deep inside the individual fields of endeavor that we specialize in? And so we stepped through a kind of a 6-month journey of how other disciplines are executing on the ECHO model of care, ECHO model of best practices and the like. Ashley and I stood in front of the board of the AAP and pitched the notion that this was a good idea to think about developing it deeper inside the council. They seemed to like it. Others seemed to like it. Miguel seemed to like it. And we got some good responses back. We envisioned the kind of notion of a self-governance kind of subcommittee that would initially focus on a lot of QI work, because that's still a really challenging area to meet demands, stay ahead of it. What are the best practices to motivate residents to participate? How does that engage inside the board's community? all that is important for program directors to share the best practices. And ACGME is using this PDPQ ECHO model to try to demonstrate and support that effort. And we became part of it a year or so ago. And now we're evolved to a point of building a subcommittee of this council to be self-governed, to start executing on the ECHO model that could be done inside of our meetings yearly or in between meetings. Any number of models can be created around this ECHO model, from which we could start with QI and learning QI. Some examples might be, what's the best way to motivate residents? How do you get faculty development and engagement across QI? How do you set up a resident for success for, say, participating in a QI project that then could be submitted into as banked into the American Board of PM&R. The list goes on how we might develop curricula around quality improvement. Those are there's some hidden gems amongst us all, and we could share, again, learn, all teach together in this model. So Holly, I see you're are here and you are on the screen. Do you have any additions that you want to add from your experience?
No, I think you summarized it well. I think, the biggest thing here is this ECHO model. We did the whole PDPQ course was kind of using this ECHO model. And then we've since then kind of done more of an intensive course, kind of learning the details about it. But just like Chris was saying, it's sort of an all teach, all learn, case-based learning. So, as a network, we could come together with cases, things that are challenging, whether it's QI based or even education based, and then kind of discuss bring these cases as a community and discuss as a community, like how we can improve the whatever problem is presented. Something we'll talk more about at the meeting in Anaheim, but we all got really excited about it and feel like it could be really helpful with this group.
Yeah. And we also, in this governance structure inside the subcommittee, it also could be a participant. Others in the council could participate, develop a leadership structure, scale into that, rotate off, and really have a robust kind of environment that is a part of the council. A future state might be that it extends out into the AAP at large, but first we need to crawl before we walk before we run kind of thing. But Ashley Jaffe has been a good brain effort in conceptualizing this, because she has been deep inside the ECHO model, and it's been wonderful to work with her. And so we did take a break from the PDPQ because we really didn't get the message out fast enough. So we didn't get a group of people to start in the process that's ongoing. It starts from January to June kind of time frame. But we'll get that started back and really kind of get more information out to you at the meeting coming up in Anaheim. I think Tracy was on, if I see that. Yep, there you are. If you want to make a comment about maybe give a little pitch for this notion.
I think the other great thing about it was a little of commiserating as we all struggle with this evolving and challenging educational topic, and how do we all kind of had similar challenges with engaging faculty and residents in this process. Sometimes there was a champion within a program and someone who was really passionate about something, but generally speaking, sort of identifying low-hanging fruit or resources that probably already exist, and modifying that to make it more clearly, quality improvement and patient safety oriented, sort of just reshaping or looking at things from a different perspective can offer you that opportunity without having to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. And I suspect that they're in response to the clear visits. This is self-protective for all the program directors, is that in response to the agonizing hand wringing that ACGME is doing over the clear visit results across all disciplines, they, in true to form, they may very well be trying to help PDPQ, ECHO, but they may very well backlash or return back to the state of usual, which would be, we're going to put some rules in place and we're going to spread those rules out. And we need to prepare for all of the above. And I think this committee would be able to respond accordingly.
And I'll say that's one of the reasons, I think Dr. Garrison and felt and Dr. Jaffe felt, and I agreed that this was the perfect place to start this kind of task force with the program directors. So I'll put a plug in for Dr. Garrison and Dr. Jaffe now. If you're interested in helping or being part of that task force, Chris, maybe you can throw your email or something in the chat.
Yeah.
And people can reach out to you. We will continue to be marketing and pushing for people to join on the ground floor, so to speak. All right. I think there were just a couple things that Jeff alluded to that I wanted to just kind of throw out to the crowd, because one of the things I know that these things are going to come up at the meeting here in February, but one of my nightmare scenarios is we all talk about it and we don't come to a conclusion in February. So I thought maybe if we started talking, thank you, Chris, that if we started talking about some of the stuff now, we could start to let it marinate and maybe be able to come to consensus in February. So one good example is like for program signals, there was a lot of talk amongst med students. Do we signal our home program? Do we signal places where we did away rotations? And they got all kinds of different feedback. So I'd be really curious to know what people think, and maybe we can come to like some kind of pre-consensus on this meeting that we could then present in February as that, and open that up for discussion in that way.
Hey, Miguel, it's Ashley Bolger. Sorry, I can't come on camera because I'm trying to wrap up some bath time, but I figured this would be a good time to update people on some hot off the presses, so to speak, news from the AAMC. Natasha and I were at a meeting yesterday about program signaling, and there is a lot of talk and a lot of push to go to a universal across all specialties recommendation. So we may not have to discuss that if the AAMC comes out with a universal policy. There is still no agreement on what that universal policy might be. And even within the meeting, there was a lot of discrepancy, but I think we could still talk about it, but just so that everybody is aware. Hey, buddy, hold on. Sorry, guys. It may not be a decision we have to make. We would still have to make a decision about program signaling, but the signaling your home versus away may be universal one way or the other next year.
Okay, that would take some pressure off, but it might still be good to kind of talk about it. I see Dixie put in the chat, AAMC, I thought AAMC strongly recommended students signal their home institutions this season. I don't remember, honestly. Whenever a med student asked me, I told them to just signal.
Well, that was what was recommended for our specialty and several others. So Dixie's right about that.
Okay.
Unless otherwise specified, which there were about maybe 4 or 5 specialties that specified don't signal your, maybe not even that many. It's specified not to signal your home or away program. But then I know, Eric, we talked about this. I mean, we know our trainees or our applicants were getting all kinds of different advice, and the people who rotated it, did away rotations with me were asking, and we kind of wanted to leave it up to you guys to decide how to use your preference signals. If you want to use them on your home program in a way, then you can, but you don't have to, because maybe you're not that interested in those programs. But anyway, yeah, we need an agreement. It would be nice if the AAMC makes the decision for us, but we need to know what that decision is going to be, I think, before we decide how many preference signals make sense. Because if applicants do signal home and away rotation programs, we'd probably want to go with a higher number. And if they say, don't signal your home program or away rotation, then we probably would go with a lower number. So that's, I don't know. I mean, it's great that they are probably going to make a universal recommendation, but I hope they do it soon.
I agree with you fully, Jeff. There was lots of people who made that very clear on the call yesterday, because I believe the deadline is mid-April. I want to say the 13th or the 15th off the top of my head. So we made that, stop, please. We made that very clear.
Okay. So it sounds, I mean, I think that's kind of reasonable to say I think what Jeff said is pretty reasonable. Like if we're not going to signal home programs or ways, then maybe we would hold pat or go down. And if we are signaling, we would consider maybe increase. That seems pretty logical to me in terms of, and like emotionless in terms of it being rational. So so I hopefully we'll have a universal set of rules, but if we didn't, I don't know, I'm not sure what the safest kind of thing, so that nothing gets lost in translation, might be to have signals. That way nothing is missed, and then be able to give them more. I'm not sure. That's just I'm thinking out loud.
So just for the record, and Ashley, you're on. I don't know if anybody else on the task. I don't think anybody else from the task force is on tonight, but I'm pretty sure that we are kind of informal consensus on the task force was do not signal home program and away rotation programs, keep the number the same. Is that's the gist I was getting from our task force. Does that sound right, Ashley, to you?
I think it's Natasha and I had this discussion yesterday kind of on a sidebar while our meeting was going on, and I think we both agreed that we don't know that it was as clear as we wanted it to be. And I think that's what we're hearing from the AAMC as well. Like just across the board, there's so many, I don't want to say arguments, but so many perspectives from both sides, and neither side is perfect, right? Like if you do it one way, you're going to give up some things. And if you do it the other way, you're going to give up other things, and have different types of errors either way. So I don't know what the best answer truly is. I think there's a lot of varying opinions. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that solution that you outline, Jeff, of not signaling away rotations in home institutions and keeping the signals the same, for me, if I was to vote, that would be my favorite option. I think that's very logical, but I guess we'll have to find out if that becomes an option or not.
Okay. I think we have, there were a couple things that were said that seem like actual options. So maybe what we've successfully done is talk about a couple of potential options. One, the task force liked and has momentum on this call, maybe the one Eric just said, which is don't signal your home or aways and stand pat at the signals we have now. And then, another option might be signal them and grow the signals. And then we could, that would be something that then we could just present those two options and vote on those, for example, at the meeting. And we may not need to have extended discussion, or we can have some discussion, but I want to just make sure that we come to a consensus so that we have a backup plan. Because also there's a deadline, right, in theory, for when we have to say how many signals we're going to go to. So
they told me March 15th.
So that's really soon. That's before April.
But if they're dragging their feet on, if the AAMC hasn't decided by then about the home and away program thing, then I don't know how they can stick to that. So hopefully they will decide much sooner than that. Well, I guess we'll see. I don't know, Ashley, Ashley, it sounded like they told you more of something in April.
I could have sworn, I'm going to try to dig through the documents they sent us and see if it's in there. Yeah. I could have, there's two different dates, and that's what was a little confusing. They are having different dates for new specialties coming into the system, and that one is earlier because there's no data to review associated with it, whereas specialties that participated last year are being given a little extra time. So that's why I want to say I remembered an April date. Give me 1 second. Let me go into my email and I can hopefully find something.
I definitely have an email that says March 15th. That's where I'm getting that. But I mean, that doesn't mean that it hasn't changed, because that wasn't, within the last week or two. So.
Yeah, I had heard, I think Tracy told me something about March as well. So I guess, you know, we can tentatively plan to put that up for a vote in that fashion. And we still have like a month-ish, a little less to figure out whether there'll be something. Yeah, go ahead, Sandra.
I just wanted to throw out a couple of considerations.
Okay.
I would really encourage us to think about these decisions from the standpoint of what are the data showing. I think these are really hard to intuit. I have my own intuitions. I don't know if they're correct about what would actually be in favor for the student groups and the like. With regards to the number of signals, I'm not sure if there's an assumption that when we give students more signals, it is a better outcome for students, or that students have more voice or more say. I think we should look at the data to answer that question. It might be the case and it might not be. Giving people more signals dilutes what the signal actually means. So if our data already show that many of the very strong programs to which many students apply are already not able to give interviews to a lot of the signals, I would not vote to increase the number of signals, because it's going to dilute the power of the signal and move us more towards a situation where we're back with the people who have the strong scores are the ones who get the interviews. So I'd strongly encourage us to look at the data for that answer before making a decision, if we can. And if not, then we make a decision to this year and then I guess look again the next if there's truly no data. The same data approach for home and away is kind of the same thing. Really, the question we need to ask ourselves is, as a program director group, are we, for the most part, giving interviews to students who are home and students who are away? And I think we need that answer before we can make otherwise our gut feelings are all going to be different depending on how we make those decisions for our students.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. I think someone else on this call is going to correct me, but I was under the impression that we wouldn't have that data in time for the annual meeting, unfortunately.
Yeah, I love those points, Sandra.
Yeah, we probably won't have the program director stuff in its entirety. They are working on some of the other preliminary data specific to PM&R. And we are one of the first groups that has their annual conference based on the meeting yesterday. So I'm hoping that means we get bumped up the priority list to get some of the data, but I don't know how much we will have. I'm hopeful a decent amount.
Yeah, I was just going to say, oh, sorry, Dixie, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I know I love the discussion, but the link that Sandra put into the chat, if you guys didn't see it already from September, I just had a question because it seemed to me that it was a directive to limit the signals to 4 and to tell our local students to signal us if they were seriously interested in our program. And it even says on this website that for our specialty PM&R, they wanted the students to signal to even subclinical away rotations in places they actually rotated. So that would probably use up all 4 signals right away. So to be fair, I followed this as if it's a rule in stone, because at the top of the website for AAMC, it says with the support of the specialty leadership organizations. So I took it to all my students and all my faculty per AAP, or our leadership and RFPD and AAMC, we need to do this. So if there was a mix up in how people communicated with their students, I do feel like that was a little bit of a loss, because I don't want resident students to feel like they were disadvantaged, because I actually have mixed feelings about the signal in general. I like students to have the advantage. They're the ones who are putting themselves on the line and showing their heart on their sleeve. And the fewer we give them, the more they have to waste, the more they use, the more stress they have. I feel sorry for them. So I just want to put that out there, that if we're going to have a guideline, we should do our best to stick to it, just for fairness and equity, because that's what I told my applicants.
Agree. I mean, I think we all agree 100%, and that's what the task force that's the priority is to make sure this time around, because with our discussion at the RFPD pre-conference last year, what we said at that pre-conference wasn't exactly the same thing that you saw in that AAMC document that came out subsequently. So hence that's already there was some discrepancy in the messaging. And we know that there was inequity this year, because there definitely was different advice. I mean, talking to applicants, I know there was different advice from different advisors, different institutions as to whether or not to signal home program and away rotation programs. Definitely. And that's exactly what we want to avoid. So yeah, that's a priority. That's probably the top priority, is to agree to have a uniform agreement on that.
Sandra?
The other thing we could consider, going back to if we're going to have no data at the time that we need to make these decisions, is that we could make a decision as a collective here to ask a few programs to basically volunteer their data, completely anonymized. And what we would basically want to know is things like, out of how many students signaled you, how many spots, and then out of the signals received, how many got interviews, some kind of thing like that. I have to think a little bit more closely. I can't come up with an algorithm on the spot that would answer our question. I feel like that could be one way that does not take a whole lot of time, that would actually give us a data-driven decision instead of us all guessing.
I mean, I think that's a great suggestion. I mean, if we wanted to get that, we could ask PDs. I mean, even if 50% responded with their number of signals ratio to, number of, of interviews, et cetera, that could be some helpful data to review.
Would be very helpful. I know what kind of, Ashley, you just surveyed us via the listserv on interviews per spot, or interview offers per spot in the match. What kind of response did you get? And that was just a 1-question survey. Do you know, like,
I
what
do.
kind of? Yeah,
I can talk to it. We got 55 responses. I gave you guys 2 days, which I know was not a lot, but that was part of my purpose. But 55 responses to the 1-question survey. So I don't know how that would be impacted if we made it longer, but that's a pretty good representation. And I was pretty impressed with the limited amount of time I gave folks.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be, there's so much diversity in size and selectivity of PM&R residency programs that we would have to have a big number to make it meaningful. We picked 3, it would be, or a few, it just would be all over the place. I mean, as we talked about earlier, there's certain programs that are getting so many preference signals, that doesn't even, they're probably rejecting people who preference signal. And there's other programs that probably interview everyone who preference signal, and we're hoping they would get more. So I think there's going to be some significant diversity. So the bigger the sample, the better for our stats.
Yeah. So I wonder, I'm seeing the chat and I'm hearing everything. I wonder if we can tentatively plan to come to some consensus in February, with the understanding that as data comes out, or we may change our minds to collect, if we hear from AAMC when the data is coming, if it's coming like in March, or if it's not going to come till June or some crazy amount of time, we could always meet like this again in the interim, between say April or May or whatever, and figure something else out, would pull our own data then, so I think we have a little bit of wiggle room, although not a ton. So April 11th, the date for us for number of signals is April 11th. So hopefully in the next few weeks, Ashley or others on the call will have a better idea of when this data is coming. And that would give us a chance to, take all these really great suggestions and decide which way we need to go or would like to go to make a final decision.
One thing I was just going to throw out there.
Yes, Dixie from the chat. Sorry.
Here's the question: will applicants also be surveyed on their perspective? Okay, yeah. No, I was going to say, if the AAMC does not dictate to us what we have to do, if we have flexibility and options, I mean, there could be a hybrid model here where we don't necessarily say to the student they have to or don't have to signal away rotations, but it could be the preference of the individual program. So if a student does an away rotation somewhere, they can just ask that program, what is your preference? Because there may be some programs that have 1 million rotators where they may actually want them to signal because a student's sort of a dime a dozen at that place. And there's some that may have few where that rotation is means a lot more.
I think if we just want to do a quick and dirty poll in Anaheim to try to help them make a decision, I think it would be really helpful to know the numerator and denominator for the program signals received and interviews invited. That would actually guide the decision substantially without even getting into these details of, are you a high program, a medium program, this and that. I think if we have numerator, denominator submitted through an anonymous Google survey, That would actually give us a lot of the data. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would give us probably, I don't know, 80% of what we need to make that decision.
Okay, so we can talk, maybe I'll talk to Laura and Candace and figure out, if we want to do something like that, if it's easier done, via over the listserv or done, in person with some kind of like polling mechanism, like right then. I'm just saying.
We were talking about definitely doing live polling during that seminar.
Yeah.
Ashley and Natasha had already during their section on which is going to consist of, well, by the way, the SEP app is going away, but the preference signaling is staying. The stuff that was on the supplemental application that was not preference signaling is just going to be rolled into the application now. So it will still exist, just FYI. They'll probably tweak it, but most of it will stay. But there will no longer be something called the supplemental application. But anyway, Ashley and Natasha's part of the seminar. We were definitely planning on doing live polling to try to get some data. So yeah, Sandra, email me. Tell me again what your numerator and denominator was. It was offers over preference signals received. Is that what it was? Anyway, I'll put my email in. You can.
Okay.
Was that data in terms of number of signals per program, was that supposed to be not shared or anonymous? And if so, if we do share that, should it be in some sort of anonymous survey form?
Yeah, we'll figure. I mean, whatever we ask for will be anonymized. Whatever we decide to ask for or need. Again, some of these decisions may be made for us from the AAMC, but we'll go from there. So some good ideas. We can try and mine data as we can, live or before. And I think we all agree if we can come to a consensus in February, even if it changes after, based on other data we get, I think that's okay. But at least we'll kind of have a place to start from. So maybe what I'll do is I'll run through the minutes and look at this, and we can, Jeff and Eric and Tracy and I can kind of figure out how we'll present the different options that have come up here for voting based, and those can change based on the data, I suspect, but at least to have a starting point on things to vote on, quote unquote. There's it's kind of, we're 45 minutes in. There was one more thing I wanted to talk about, but I also don't want to keep everyone too long. So if you need to step off, this is a good time for you to step off. I want to bring up one other thing, which is the idea of just like a yes, no, not necessarily like an actual date, but do we like the idea of a universal offer date for interviews, meaning like you cannot offer an interview before X date, right? So there are some specialties that say like you can't offer any interviews before October 10th. Starting October 10th, you can offer interviews as often as you like, whatever amount of days you like, whatever times of day. There are other specialties that take it a step further and say, so that med students don't go insane checking their email every 5 minutes, we will only allow you to offer interviews like every Friday for the month of October or something. And so then the med students know Friday's going to be crazy, but Monday through Thursday, I can pay attention on rounds. So there's a lot to kind of discuss, but the first thing I kind of wanted to get out of this meeting was at least an idea of whether we thought any form of universal offer date, parentheses, S dates, would be a good idea.
Hey guys, I'll talk. Is that okay? So, we have some experience with a common offered time and interview time with the spinal cord fellowships before we did the match. And it ended up being a little bit better than a free for all. I think large programs that take a lot of time to go through applications are at a disadvantage because there's a lot of anxiety with trying to get through applications by a certain date, which smaller programs may not have as many applications. So I have anxiety if they're about the idea of there being a date and thinking, oh my gosh, there's no way I can get through these applications in that time, right? But I do think it could be beneficial. I had some away rotators this year where I had I had maybe gone through 20% of applications and they were already starting to get interviews. And you could, just like you said, they're in the middle of rounds and it's like ping, ping, ping on their phone. And they're looking at other interviews and they're just super anxious about it. And there was a lot of talk about it. And I don't know if it was just this year or if it's, the post-COVID anxiety, but the medical students in general seem to be extremely anxious about interviews and timing and when they're going to get the emails. And so it seemed just very, very much more of an anxiety provoking situation. So it could be beneficial for the applicant, but if we did a common interview date, I would advocate that it be a lot further out in ERAS from the ERAS open date. I don't know. It's just when people were getting interviews, I was thinking, how on earth are these programs doing this? Because it just takes too long to go through all the applications.
Yeah, I think those are great points, Amanda. I mean, I guess my vision, I'm definitely in favor of some sort of date in some kind of system. And my hope would be that it would sort of take away some of that anxiety for the program director, because I think, as the system is now, there are programs that offer interviews like really, really quickly as it is. And for programs that take a little longer, it does give us all like some anxiety knowing that, students are already booking up their calendars while we're spending more time looking at applications. So if we were to do this, and like you said, Amanda, if the date was pushed far enough back that we felt it was reasonable and sort of gives us all, a reasonable amount of time to review a lot of our applications, then, I think it could be like a happy medium.
Definitely in favor, for the record. Ideally, it would reduce interview hoarding. The big thing, and we did have our code of conduct for programs this year, we specified that the applicants have to be given a minimum of 48 hours to accept the offered interview. The Organization of Program Director Associations, which I'm your friendly representative to for PM&R, actually their recommendation, which came out later, was 72. I think we should probably change ours to be in line with national recommendations. And maybe, just make sure that applicants know that. Maybe that will alleviate like 1% of their anxiety. Probably not, but it might help a little bit that they don't have to constantly check their phone if they know they have 72 hours to accept any interview offer that they do get. And they would know when to look at their phone if we can agree on interview offer dates collectively.
What do you got, Dixie?
Yeah, I just think that some of the wisdom over the years was trying to encourage everyone not to offer more interviews than they have slots to interview, right? So part of the anxiety for the students is they think if I don't sign up immediately, they're going to give my slot to somebody else and there won't be another chance because number 90 has already taken up my spot. So I never invite more than I can handle, but that might be a disadvantage to me, or I don't know. But I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that might be a worthwhile question to pose to the group, in the next meeting. Of like, how many folks, like even that survey you collected was basically the ratio of how many offers interviews you have for the spots you have. But the next question would be how many people do you actually invite and how many slots do you have, right?
Well, theoretically, we all agreed, and it was in our code of conduct that no one would offer more interviews than they had slots.
Right. So is there anxiety?
Yeah, so theoretically,
the anxiety should not be well-founded then. So that's what I'm saying.
The anxiety that med students have told me about is, say like I'll send, say I have 100 interviews I'm going to do, and I'll send 25, like a batch of 30 out, which is say 3 interview dates. The anxiety they have is that they know they have a spot, but they want a specific date. And so if they don't click right away, they're going to end up with the first date, and they don't want to be the first, interview date. So there's always going to be anxiety unless you release one date at a time. And then you're going to get tons of emails like, hey, can you just like hold on to my app, invite somebody else and give me like the next week? So I think, so it's never going to be perfect, whether we have a universal offer date or not. We're always going to get emails. There's always going to be some amount of anxiety. I think in the way I kind of look at it is having a universal offer date it gets some equity or equality to the programs to review the application, so that the interviews can kind of go out all at once and not have, you know, somebody being like, oh, I'm way behind, and not be able to really review applications. Some PDs review every app themselves. Some people have like a massive committee that's like going through and scanning everything. So we're not all the programs are the same. I think where you start to take anxiety, but that doesn't take the anxiety away, it just pushes it back a few weeks. I think where some people might have some anxiety taken away is there are some specialties, like I said, that say, okay, you're only going to get interview offers on Fridays, like these particular Fridays. And so then you can kind of block off that time and know your anxiety is going to be like this Friday. And at least it's not every single day. So I think that's a discussion that is going to take a long time to kind of figure out. I am hearing that. I'm not hearing any. Does anybody is anybody against some version of a universal offer date?
I guess my concern, which was voiced by someone else, is that it's already hard enough to try to get through all the applications in a timely fashion. And so in a sense, I feel like if we pick a date that's too early, then we are shifting anxiety. Instead of the medical students, is going to be all the program directors and anyone else who's on the committee trying to look at applications. Because the problem is sometimes the applications get in early enough, but people don't have any letters of reference, or maybe they have, you know, a letter of reference in a field that is less related to PM&R. And you know, we know that the student's planning to, for example, do a rotation in PM&R, but there aren't any letters yet. So I feel the idea of having a specific day of the week on which invitations go out is a reasonable one, with the idea that people do have 72 hours to respond. That one would work. I could see that working for us, but I just feel like it's going to be really difficult to hit that happy spot as far as if we have a universal offer of interview dates, not to make it too early for some of the programs.
Yeah, it'll definitely be hard. I just want to be clear, because I know the first time somebody talked to me about this, I didn't get it. So I'm sorry if you all understand and I'm repeating it for no reason. The universal offer date is just the first date you're allowed to offer. It doesn't mean you have to offer. So you could tweet out, or you could put out into the ether, hey, my program is not going to offer anyone until November 1, or whatever it is. It just means that there's nobody on the call that's allowed to offer like September 29th, right? Because that, you know, it's only been 1 day since the portal has been open. Like, how could you have reviewed everybody? So that's kind of the idea. I think you're right, though. It's shifting some anxieties in different ways, but I just want to make sure that's clear, that like you don't have to offer just because it's the date. It just means you can't offer before that.
Okay.
Well, and I think, you know, if the system was to have multiple dates, like you said, Miguel, like every Friday, or, you know, if there were like 2 different dates or whatever, as a program, you can say like, we're not going to be ready to release our interviews on this first date, but we plan to, you know, release them on the second date. So people are aware.
And I think we all would want a relatively late date, because yeah, we're all program directors and we all share that same concern that Rena enunciated. And I think we can decide as a group of program directors what is a date that collectively we feel an acceptable level of anxiety about for our first interview offer date.
Okay, so would it be fair for me to say that we'd be looking more at style of date and style of universal offer, as opposed to whether or not we should have one? And when we talk at the meeting. Okay.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, it's a cross specialty GME, you know, imperative that I think as a specialty, we should try to play along.
Okay. I think that's great. No, I think that's perfect. That's what I wanted, to like come to some sort of consensus. So in February, we can just present it that way. We're going to have this. Yeah. What version of it do you want? And let's move forward. So I think that's great.
Right, and we probably won't hash it out tonight, but I just had another thought that if we push the date too late, which is good for directors and committees to go through all the things thoughtfully, if that's the soonest somebody can send out invitations, then that could harm the applicants, because if we say, okay, let's say October 20th is the first, which is not that bad, is the first day we can start offering, well, then they have less time to respond to like November 1st, if that's your first interview day, right? So if your interview season starts early, like I spread mine across November all the way to January. So I have a very long season with many different dates. So it might put the students at a disadvantage if they only have a few days. Like I know you say 48 to 72 hours sounds like a long time if they're so anxious they're checking their phone, but I would like to give them a little bit more time, especially since their internship interviews are probably all lined up by then too. And they're gonna have to really look at their calendar. So I don't know, there's disadvantages all over the place for every scenario. So we're not gonna hash it out tonight, I know, but I can imagine this is a good thing to pitch before the meeting so people can think about it. Because I'm gonna take probably a few days to think about all the different options and what would be best for my program. I can't think of it on the fly. So I just think it's good to have some pre-thought time.
Yeah, that's a good, Dixie. Maybe what we can do, because I think today is too, like this week may be too early, but maybe like the week before, like around Valentine's Day, send this type of email out so it's kind of fresh on everyone's kind of thinking about it while they're buying chocolate. So, and then we can kind of come in ready to roll. But everyone's bringing up really excellent points, which is the kind of where I wanted to be instead of talking about should we not.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I'm not all the way there yet. I
Okay.
am not, I could be convinced. I just need a little bit more information and a clearer understanding of what's in it for the students. I understand how capping on that end helps programs who feel that they need more time, but I'm not sure that it helps programs as a whole or students as a whole yet. So a little bit more background on what would actually change in the student experience would help me make that decision. I'm
That's
not
a fair
all the way in
point.
yet. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Sandra. The only thing I could say is, which is just a gestalt of mine, where if I feel pressure to get my interviews out as a PD, I'm probably not spending as much time reviewing apps. So I'm probably looking over candidates that, just to use like classical stereotypes, like have lower board scores or this or that. So I'm not having a time to do a full holistic review and really take everything into account. So that's kind of, I think that's how I'm conceptualizing it, but I'm not sure if that's true because I don't know that I've looked at any of that data.
Yeah, I think if we believe in holistic application review, it's a way for us to lead the way, and you really tell programs that's what we recommend people do. You have this time, take the time to really look at applications. And the other advantage is what you said before, Miguel, is just like decreasing the constantly email anxiety if there's just certain dates in which you really have to key in on that.
But there's a difference between there being certain dates versus we just don't offer before date X, right? If we just push the date X, there's still that anxiety. That's a very different proposal from saying we only offer on Fridays, or that there are 3 particular Fridays in which we offer an early, a mid, and a late. And all of the programs will commit and will show you which Friday it's going to be for us. I would actually vote in favor of that third option if that were an option.
Yeah, and I think that's the kind of discussion we're going to have. I think that is an option, and there are I almost said departments. There are specialties that do that have that. They say there's like 4 offer dates in the season. These are the 4, all the programs abide by them. And we could even, we could say Friday after lunch, it doesn't even have to be like, like after 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time or whatever. So we could do whatever
that
we
actually
want.
helps the hoarding and the wait list issue, where people
So
actually know which programs have not offered versus which programs they're still waiting for. That will make a significant move on the needle there. We're still letting people offer at any given time after date X will not move the needle on that. So I think that's a distinct difference between those 2 proposals.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And beyond that, some specialties have interview caps where you have a certain number of tokens you can interview with 15 programs. And then you combine that with universal interview offer dates, and you get all your offers and you pick your top 15. And if you cancel one, you get a token back. It's pretty complicated, but did anyone watch that? It was a webinar, a AAMC webinar like last month. It was pretty compelling. It sounds crazy, but it really works in terms of interview hoarding and making applicants think about what programs they're really interested in.
Which specialties, Jeff? I'm curious.
OBGYN off the top of my head. And the rest, I think ENT, is it ENT? I think, anyway, I'll find it. I'll find it. There's a link to the webinar. I can email you, Miguel, or email that.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and then we can send it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway, that's a step beyond, obviously. We're, but it's something that's compelling and would move the needle.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on this topic? Okay. And anybody else? I guess I will have like an open forum time. Anything else anybody wants to bring up? Shall I end with a joke?
Oh, sorry.
All right. Oh, go ahead, Dixie.
I should let you end, but I was going to ask Chris Garrison one question about the PDPQ curriculum. He's been so patient listening to all this other junk. But I was going to ask, when you're imagining the QI curriculum for the program directors, are you also going to broach the topic of like how to determine QI versus research and who and what needs IRB approval? Because that's such a big barrier for a lot of people to start QI projects, because some institutions demand everything go through IRB, even if we know it's exempt, and it takes months and months and months, or others just go at it, they don't ask for approval, and they just take a stab at QI and they don't know what they're doing, but it's a free-for-all. So I think that's a really important distinction for us to learn.
Yeah, so there's debate in the QI research world. I would direct everybody, if they want to do some early reading. I think it's a great addition, and we'll put that in the hopper, by the way. So thanks, Dixie. It's called, why am I blanking on it now? Oh my gosh. Squire guidelines. Yes. Go Google Squire guidelines and you'll see the standards by which QI science can be. So you distinguish two things. One is, what is QI science? And then, and what the standards look like there. And then QI, which is improvement versus generalizability and protection of various elements of subjects that would be in the purview of IRB. So thanks for bringing it up. We'll put it in the hopper.
All right. Okay. So there's one. Here's what. How do you find Will Smith in a snowstorm? You look for Fresh Prince.
Decent.
Yeah, I know, it's terrible. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. This was really good. These meetings are going way better than I thought they would when I had this idea. So I really appreciate it, and I really love that people are speaking up. That's really what this is for. So thank you. Thanks for giving us an hour of your life. Have a good night, and we will see you all in person really soon.
I clumsily pasted a link to that interview CAP webinar, Miguel, in the chat, but I will email it without the extra verbiage to you.
Okay. Yeah, just email it to me, because I'll probably put some stuff together and Laura
I was in a hurry.
will send them out. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Night all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.